Okay, let's go a little bit more in depth when we're talking about the hormone macro code. Now, you've learned a lot of information thus far. You've learned about cleansing and a specific way to cleanse, what we call the hormone reset cleanse, reintroduction, and how certain foods can be that irritation to your body. That irritation creates the inflammation. Inflammation causes gut disruption, liver dysfunction, all the different things. And you've also have learned about the hormone macro code when it comes to carb tolerance or intolerance. And we're constantly updating and bringing in new information, new education, but also new tools. Now, why do I tell you that right now? Because the carb tolerance part of the hormone macro code is really important. So Ryan and I used to teach all low glycemic. And there's a lot of science to low glycemic, but it's not the most effective way to take care of your body. It's not the most effective way to lose fat. And there's a lot of pitfalls that come with it. That's why we shifted to macros, because if you follow me long enough, and I've said it before in different sessions, one of the things I always say is that calories will help you determine your weight loss. Macros will help you determine how strong, fit, a physique you have. But it's the quality of the macros and the calories that you take in that are going to determine your health and determine how quickly or slowly you age. Now, why am I sharing that with you? Because we've adjusted things that we've done or what we have taught because we find better ways to do them. And when it comes to calories and macros, although we know that this is the absolute way to go because we've gotten the best results and people become, women are the happiest when they're doing their macros because of the leniency that you can have with it in the sense of the type of foods that you take in. It's not always, or the body is not always responsive right away when it comes to macro ratios. And as we work with women, we've worked with thousands of women, and we looked at the test cases and we're like, what was their biggest issue? Why are some women slow to respond to carbohydrates or excuse me, to their macros? And it has to do with their carbohydrate levels. It has to do with their muscle to fat ratio. It has to do with their carb tolerance or intolerance and their activity levels. Specifically, are they strength training enough? So I tell you that because that's why we have the module in the session and the profiling when it comes to your carb tolerance or intolerance to help. It's part of the steps or part of the phases when it really comes to your hormone macro code and being able to identify your tolerance or intolerance and actually really customize your personal macros and get your metabolism, your hormones, your body functions all in check. Okay, now I say all of that in this session. It's going to be a little bit more in depth. I want to talk to you more about your calories, about your macros, different types of percentages, because another thing I want to share with you is that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And you're going to hear me say that often because there are so many variables when it comes to the body. Just like when I talk about the scale and variables, like the scale doesn't know that you just had a full breakfast when you jump on it. All it knows is that this is how much you weigh. But then you look at it as you've gained weight and you did, but it's just food weight, or maybe you drank a lot of water. So it's just fluid weight. So that's a variable. And at the same time, the scale doesn't take in, have you gained muscle? Have you lost fat? Did you have a bowel movement? Did you just eat? Where are your hormones at that given moment? So those are variables. And the same thing when it comes to your macros. That's why you might do a macro calculator and you try it or in the past, and maybe those numbers didn't work for you because of the variable. So I'm going to go over that a little bit more. So then this session is going to be a little bit more in depth. So with me saying that, I want to make sure that don't get overwhelmed. I know there's different personalities. There's a personality that says, all right, give me all the details. Even though the details, a lot of times, I have some individuals, they're like, well, I want to know why? Okay. So if you know why, is that going to help you move forward and actually take action? And some of these individuals, no, they are just info junkies and they still do nothing with the information. I am an info junkie in the sense of I want to know the why, because when I know the why, I know I can make better formed decisions. And then there's other individuals that they don't want all the information because they get overwhelmed. We're trying to reach a lot of different personalities, just like we do trying to reach a lot of different body types. That's why we are always measure, monitoring, and adjusting when it comes to our systems, how we operate, our tools, our education that we provide. So just know if you're, it doesn't matter what personality that you are. All I want to say is don't get overwhelmed. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And you can find your place when it comes to hormone reset, our hormone reset club, our hormone reset system. Okay. And I'll explain that a little bit more so you understand, like, when it comes to like the different ways and the different variables. Hopefully what I just said all makes sense to you. Okay. So in this session, we're going to talk about calories and macros, how they play a role in your health, your hormone balance, and your metabolism, what make up your calories and your macros. We're going to talk about different macro code formulas. And for some of you, this is my point, like you're going to get overwhelmed because you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much detail. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it because we've created tools to make it simple for you. And then I'm just going to go over some of quick FAQs or some tips for you when it comes to your calories and your macros. So the big question, especially when I talk about macros, people will ask, well, okay, what's most important? Am I tracking my macros, or I'm tracking calories? Are calories most important? What am I doing? And I want you to understand that calories matter, but your hormones and macros matter more. So going back to the statement that I've made, calories will determine your weight loss. Your macros will determine, let's make it simple, your physique, what it looks like, the ratios in which you take them in. And then the quality of the macros and calories that you take in determine your health and how well you age. All right. So calories are important, but not as important as taking care of your hormones and your macros. And all of that's going to make more sense here in a minute. So when I talk about calories will help determine your weight loss, that brings me to what I call the law of thermodynamics. And I know there's a lot of out in the industry, there's a lot of pushback because really what it is, it's calories in versus calories out. And then someone will want to argue with you because they're saying it's not that simple, but it really is when it comes to your body. What makes it complex are the variables that I've mentioned. What makes it complex is the type of calories that we're taking in and the ratios in which we're taking it in. Because people have this idea that a specific food causes you to gain weight, and it doesn't. It's the surplus. It's the surplus of caloric intake that causes you to gain weight. And it's the surplus, the caloric surplus over a period of time that causes you to gain weight, because that means that you're taking in more calories than your body actually burns in a given day. That's how we gain weight. But it doesn't happen like with one meal. It doesn't happen with even a couple meals. It's the day in, day out, week after week, month after month, to where we're consistently taking in a surplus of calories, more calories than we're burning, that causes us to gain weight. Now, the argument happens as well, it's also the lack of quality. And I don't disagree with that. Because not only do we take in a surplus of calories that cause us to gain weight, so we're taking in more calories, than our body's actually burning. But then we also take in foods that are what we call highly palatable, highly processed, and when they are, that means that they're chemically laden, they've got bad seed oils in them, they're just crap, or they're laden with crap, pesticides, herbicides, all the waxes that we don't get off of them, and we consume it, and that short circuits our system, so we have problems detoxifying. It's breaking down, it's creating inflammation, it's breaking down our gut health, or disrupting our gut health and gunking up our liver. So that's going to cause issues and cause us to gain weight. But there's no one food specifically that causes you to gain weight. There's no good or bad, right or wrong, and that's how Ryan and I operate. Because are there foods that are what I call nutrient dense and low in calorie? Absolutely. And then are there foods that are calorically dense and low in nutrients? Absolutely. And then are there foods that are manufactured to make up your body think that it's actually food? Yeah, absolutely. Because here's the thing, what happens with the law of thermodynamics, and when we're looking at calories and the food that we're taking in, your body doesn't have the emotion. Your brain creates the emotion. Your body doesn't look at a food and say, "Oh, I just ate a chocolate cake. I'm a horrible person, and now I'm going to gain weight because it was sugar." No, what it does, it looks at all the different components, right, that you take in a food. It says, okay, does it have fat? Does it have carbohydrates? Does it have protein? And what do I need to do with it? Because your body, all it knows is the bodily processes. It knows what to do when it has protein. It knows what to do when it has carbohydrates. It knows what to do when it takes in fat. And the issue arises, or the issues arise, when we're taking in, like I said, the foods that are highly palatable, highly processed, that short circuit your system, because then your body's like, okay, it looks like a carbohydrate. Like, when they say it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it's a duck. But it doesn't happen when you're taking in a food that's not really a food, or it has the extra chemicals to it, or it's been refined so much that it's like, oh, I know what this is, but I can't process it as fast. So those are the arguments there, but there's still the law of thermodynamics, and not all foods are created equal, but your brain should know that, but your body doesn't know it. And hopefully what I'm sharing with you makes sense. So the reason I'm sharing this with you, because I want you to knock out of your brain the whole idea of that's going to make me gain weight. Now, could it make you gain weight in the sense of inflammation? Absolutely. Why? Because your body's intolerant to it, because your body's already inflamed. Yeah, so you're going through that hormone weight gain cycle. So food can do that. So it's creating inflammation in your body. So you're thinking you're gaining weight, or it's making you more puffy, but it's not necessarily per se, unless you're doing it day in, day out, week after week, month after month, like I said, taking a surplus of calories in, more calories than your body's actually burning, then you will gain weight. Because here's how your body works. And then I'll move on from this. I want to just keep going. Your body has a base metabolic rate. And everyone is different, because it's based on your muscle to fat ratio. It's based on all like different variables. Are you on medication? Do you have liver issues? Do you have gut issues? Do you have an autoimmune issue? Have you ever had kids? Where are your hormones? All of these different things. Have you had a surgery? Have you been ill? Have you been injured? All of this plays a role on how your body actually processes and breaks down calories, and the amount of calories that it actually needs. Muscle fat ratio is one of the biggest ones. So let's say that your body just to exist, just to breathe and pump blood through your body, it takes 1,500 calories to exist. So how your body works when it comes to the law of thermodynamics, if you are taking in 1,500 calories a day, then you are going to maintain the weight that you're at. If you take in more than 1,500 calories a day over a period of time, you will gain weight. Now, the ratios in which you take the calories in, your protein to fat to carbohydrates, that weight can be muscle. Like if you actually are strength training and you're doing it strategically, but if you're just overeating more calories than your body can burn, then you will gain weight. And on the latter of that, or the other side of that, is if your body requires 1,500 calories to exist and you want to lose weight, you take in 1,200 calories a day, which is very low, okay? But if you're taking in 1,200 calories a day, then over a period of time, you will drop weight. And again, the ratios will be the determining factor. The ratios of the macronutrients that you take in will be the determining factor on that weight you lose. Do you lose muscle or do you lose fat? So we'll go into more of that. Another issue is with the law, or I should say issue, why we might have issues with our metabolism is because we, on a regular basis, we're taking in too low of calories. And now we've slowed down our metabolism. And when we have done that, we easily gain weight because our body is not burning. It can't utilize the calories that it take in, even though maybe you need 1,500 calories, but your muscle to fat ratio is so off, you have so much body fat on your body, is that it's not even burning up those 1,500 calories. And this disrupts your metabolism. Things that disrupt the law of thermodynamics. I've talked about different variables already, but like your calories being too low for a period of time. So now what happens is called the law of or not the law, but it's a metabolic adaptation, where automatically your body starts slowing down the rate at which it burns calories. This will create hormonal disruption. It puts stress on your body and raises your cortisol. And this will eventually stress out your thyroid, which is a key metabolic hormone, and your metabolism gets even slower. So that probably all made you depressed, but don't be depressed. Be inspired because you can actually correct it over time. Okay. Now, talking about calories and macronutrients. What is a calorie? A calorie is simply a unit measurement of energy that is assigned to your food. Calories is simply energy. That's what your brain or your body looks at. It's calories and energy. It doesn't say good food, bad food. It says, oh, I'm taking in energy and what do I do with it? What makes up the calorie is the macronutrient. That's your protein, that's your fat, that's your carbohydrate. So calories is part of the law of thermodynamic. Macronutrients it is about the sculpting and controlling what your physique and your health will be like. Because the ratios in which you take in protein, fat, and carbohydrates will be the determining factor on how your body responds to everything and how your body will actually look. That's why I say you could cut your calories in order to lose weight, but if you are not getting the right amount of protein, the right amount of fat, and the right amount of carbohydrate for your body, for your age, for your activity level, then you could lose weight, but you end up losing muscle versus fat. So now you're just skinny fat. And if you ever deviate from the way that you're eating because you just focused on calories, you will gain weight back. And the form that you gain it back in is usually fat, not muscle. And macronutrients are powerful. The reason that we fell in love with dialing in individuals' macronutrients, because different programs, let's say paleo or keto or Whole30 or Atkins or Weight Watchers or whatever, you fill in the blank. They're usually, even low glycemic. By default, they're having you clean up your food, but they're not having you do proper ratios in which you need. So when you start to plateau or you lose weight and maybe you look gaunt, maybe you're flabby, so you're that skinny fat, maybe you lost the weight, but you just don't look that great. And it's because it's not giving you the macronutrients in the right ratios in which you need them. And so that's an issue. The next thing that I always say is, okay, what happens when you plateau? If you plateau, and you will plateau, trust me on this, because if you do not know that the amount of calories and macronutrients that you're taking in, eventually your body will go through what I said, metabolic adaptation, meaning that it will slow down and you will stop getting results. You will stop progressing. So what do? You can't eat cleaner. You can't eat more keto. You can't eat more paleo because there's no numbers to it. With macronutrients, you can always measure, monitor, and adjust, and you can measure, monitor, and adjust based on your goal, based on where are you right now? What do you want to do? I want to drop a percentage of body fat. I want to increase my muscle. I just want to maintain. I just want to feel healthier. And so your numbers can always change and they grow and move with you. That's what I love about macronutrients in your macros. So the macronutrient, as I said, are the nutrients we need in larger quantities that provide us with the energy in other words, it's the protein, the fat, and the carbohydrates. Like your micronutrients are your vitamins and your minerals. So we need our protein, our fat, and our carbs in their largest form to help our body operate. So you have your calorie, which is the unit of energy, but then you have your macros, which is your macronutrient. I'll say it again, your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrate. So how does it break down? For every 1 gram of protein equals 4 grams, or excuse me, for every 1 gram of protein equals 4 units of energy or calories. For every 1 gram of fat equals 9 units of energy or 9 calories. And then for every 1 gram of carbohydrates equals 4 calories, just like protein. So an example, 100 grams of protein, you times it by 4, it'll give you 400 calories. Get it? Got it? All right, good. So let's break down these macronutrients, build the building blocks, your hormone balance and a healthy metabolism. Calories are important, but your hormones and macronutrients are more important. But the ratio of these macronutrients are even more important than that. Okay, so what does that mean? Powerhouse protein. Most women do not get in enough protein. And as we start to mature, protein is critical all our life. But as we start to mature, start to go through hormonal decline, it's even more important. Why? Because as we start to go through hormonal decline, we also start to go into a catabolic state. What does that mean? It means that we start breaking down muscle. Muscle is made up from protein. Protein and polypeptides make up most of your body's hormones. So, and proteins are chains of amino acids, and each protein has a different makeup of amino acid. The protein is responsible for the creation of organs, muscles, skin, hair, like your keratin, your collagen, your elastin. It's important for cell communication. Protein causes biochemical reactions like your digestion, your muscle contraction, your energy production. And protein and polypeptides, like I said, they make up the body's most metabolic hormones. So it's important, they help produce hormones, helps with balancing your fluids. And again, like I said, building your muscle. And these chains of amino acids have different makeup. So when the amino acids are broken down in your body, they're used to build tissue and they're used to signal your metabolism. So it helps with DNA. As far as DNA is the program for protein in your body. And there needs to be plenty of these amino acids because without even one of the essential amino acids, even one amino acid missing, the protein can't complete its function. And there's 20 amino acids, and there are 8 that can't be. So there's 20 amino acids that you can consume, but then there's 8 that can't be produced by your body. So that means that they are essential amino acids. And then there's non-animal proteins as well. But the issue is that they don't make up the complete, what we call the complete protein, because one amino acid might be missing. Okay. And then there's different reasons for that as well. And I'll explain to you here 1 second. So the fat composition of like protein of meat makes a difference. So grass-fed, wild-caught fish, then you have your poultries. They're all different, and they're going to provide different things. That's why, I'm not telling everyone, if you're a vegetarian, that's your jam, that's fine. But you get more of what you need from animal sources of protein than you do from plants. It's very difficult, like I said, that because there's essential amino acids, and then not only that, it's different types of fats that are combined with these animal sources of protein that your body actually like grass-fed beef, when it's done properly, when it's grass-fed, grain finished, and higher omegas, higher quality saturated fat, your body actually likes that. Your digestive system likes that. And protein is the essential structure component, like I said, of all hormones. So perfect example, like arginine lets what they call glycagon know what's going on and helps slow down like your insulin response. And that's important because most of you, like if you're very carb intolerant, you have a very fast insulin response, and now your body's not responding properly. And as I alluded, most women don't get enough protein in their diet. They say less than 30% of women take in the amount of protein that they actually need. Low protein is considered 50 grams or more. And I see some women, they're lucky if they get 65. And I'll tell you right now, that low of protein is like somebody that's, has a liver or kidney issue, right? Because so their body's not processing protein properly. 15% of your total calories decreases levels of prolactin. So prolactin, growth hormone, estrogen, thyroid hormones, and insulin. So right now, think about it. If you're not getting the amount of protein that you need, then those levels are off. And when we're not getting enough protein, it stimulates a stress response, increasing our body fat and contributing to fatty liver disease. Not only that, we know that we just need protein to function as far as your brain. More studies are showing the food that you eat actually makes up your brain, and protein and fat are 2 of the most important macronutrients for your brain. Why am I sharing that with you? Because as we start to mature, as we go through menopause, I've say this over and over and over again, we're at higher risk for heart disease, diabetes, dementia, Alzheimer's. That's like we're at very, very high risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. And fluid, water, is an important component, but they say protein and fat are huge, are very important. So I could keep going, but I'm not going to. When it comes to protein, I think I stressed to you enough how important it is. And you do have some plant proteins like spirulina, hemp, soy, quinoa, lentils, buckwheat, amaranth, brown rice, beans, chickpeas. But they're more macro balanced versus, because they'll say, oh, eat beans for protein. But really, here's the thing. it has just as much carbohydrates. So now you have to balance all of that out. And that's a whole nother conversation. So let's move forward. Let's talk about our fat. Fat is another really important, as I just talked about, is really important for our brain, but hormones are produced from fat and cholesterol. Testosterone is a really important hormone for women. We always think about testosterone in men, and we kind of slide over it when it comes to women. You realize that testosterone is one of the most abundant hormones in women, not estrogen, but actually testosterone. So that means that you need that dietary fat. You need it for your brain, you need it for hormone production, and adjusting the types and ratios of your macronutrients when it comes to your protein, your fat, your carbohydrates. You can build a healing diet. And one of the things we know is that a lot of hormonal imbalances are likely due to low fat diets or not getting the right amount of fat in. So you need those dietary fats. You have two major kinds of fats. You got your saturated, unsaturated, and saturated is not necessarily bad. People are always like, oh, stay away from saturated fat because of cholesterol. You produce more bad cholesterol when your body doesn't get enough cholesterol. And you produce more bad cholesterol when your body's getting too much refined carbohydrates, because you actually will synthesize bad cholesterol from sugar. Okay. That's why if you're on a statin, you need to get off it. It's the worst thing that you do. Worst thing you do for your hormones, worst thing that you could do for your brain, worst thing that you can actually do for your heart. Now, there's a caveat to that, because like if you've gotten your DNA done, you might have one of the gene factors. Like for me, I need saturated fat, but I need moderate amounts of saturated fat because my body doesn't process it the same as someone that doesn't have the gene factor. So not everybody has that. Just like everyone is different. Just because a food might be good for you doesn't mean it's necessarily good for me. Then you have unsaturated fat that comes in two forms, like your avocado, olive oil, which is monounsaturated fat, polyunsaturated fats you get from like your salmon, your flax, your walnuts, and all fats are made of chains of fatty acids. You got short, you got medium, you got long. So why is that important? Because short and medium, one of the things that I was just sharing with you when it comes to like grass-fed beef, when it's grass-fed, grain-finish, it actually has a higher quality of short chain fatty acids, and your GI tract actually loves that, and it uses it very quickly for short-term energy. As a female, unless you've been directed by a doctor, which most are not going to tell you, but you should not go under 25% of your daily caloric intake. So if you take in 1,800 calories, then 25% of that should be, and that's just an example, should be fat. Then you have your carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates, I always talk about it, they get a bad rap. And because, people are like, oh, carbs are bad, carbs make you gain weight. No, carbs do not make you gain weight. Let me repeat what I said here in the early on. Is what causes you to gain weight is a surplus of calories. And then it's the ratio of it. The reason that you might have trouble with carbohydrates, because it's been the day in, day out, week after week, month after month, that you're taking in an excess of carbohydrates, that macronutrient, to your protein and your fat, and your body's not processing it properly. So yeah, now you do have an issue with carbohydrates, but you can also correct that. The average American takes in anywhere from 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates a day. I don't even do 200 grams. I might do 200 to 300 grams on a load day. And not only that, they say that they take in 200 to 300 grams per day of carbohydrates, and it's usually in the form of French fries, which is crap, which I love French fries, but don't get me wrong, it's still crap. And ketchup, which is also crap, okay? That's why you might be having issues with carbohydrates. It's not the carbohydrate per se, but it's how you've taken them in ratios over time. So They're not used to synthesize hormones, but they help direct. They drive all the engines in the bodily process to produce hormones. Your preferred fuel of the body is actually carbohydrates. And the better, the more quality of the carbohydrate, obviously, the better. It gives you quick energy. It helps with your muscle, helps with your brain activity, supports serotonin, dopamine production, and your thyroid. Refined carbohydrates or sugars don't cause you to gain weight. I already just talked about that. The reason that we have the issues, I already talked about that. And when we have over consumption, like I said, if you're taking in 200 to 300 grams of carbohydrates per day, you have not enough protein and maybe too much fat, or your just ratios are off. Well, now you have high insulin levels, and where there's insulin, when insulin is present, fat burning ceases to exist. And then you also have high blood glucose levels. So even when you take in a quality carbohydrate, it stores it as fat because your body is out of whack. I'm sharing that with you. That's why we do the carb tolerance profiling, and we do what we call the hormone macro code as far as the carb tolerance phase or step of the system in order to get your body more responsive to carbohydrates. But carbohydrates are powerful, ladies, and you do not want to restrict them, because when you restrict them for too long, then there's issues. And that's why we do it in the phase and the ratio and the steps in which we do it. Okay. Eliminating carbs for too long or doing too low carbohydrates for too long. Well, remember, it's that metabolic adaptation, but it literally puts physical stress on your body. So then it increases your cortisol. When we increase our cortisol, we increase our insulin, we increase our belly fat and estrogen. It causes your testosterone to actually plummet because it's putting stress on your thyroid. It causes your serotonin to dip. So that's why you get cranky. That's why you get emotional. That's why you'll get tired. Your thyroid will put on the brakes. So now it's slowing down all your metabolic processes, and you start to slow down the rate at which you actually gain muscle and even preserve muscle. So you need carbohydrates to actually build muscle, not just protein. They work together. Now, we always talk about the 80-20 rule. So 80% of the time, make sure that you're taking in whole foods. The less processed, the better, obviously. Look at the hormone reset food list. Fruit is always better eaten whole with fiber intact. Why did I share with that? Because you have different types of carbohydrates, right? And when I say that, because carbohydrates are broken down into sugar. So you have monosaccharides, which is fructose, glucose. You have disaccharides, which is like sucrose, maltose, lactose. You have polysaccharides, which is like your glycogen, starch, dextrin, pectin, cellulose. Oligosaccharides, which is like your prebiotics, which is your fructose, galactose, oligosaccharides. Man, right? There's a lot of different ones. And your body all responds differently to them. So a lot of times people are like, oh, that's a high glycemic fruit. It doesn't matter, because if you're eating it whole and you're eating it and with your macros and right ratios, you're getting antioxidants, you're getting phytonutrients, and you're getting fiber, right? Grains, gluten, protein is difficult to digest. So the less refined is actually the best for your hormonal health. And understand, when it comes to gluten, not everyone has a gluten issue, okay? Some people are gluten sensitive. I am gluten sensitive. If you have some type of autoimmune issue, if you have any type of thyroid issue, then you should be staying away from gluten, because we know that if you're gluten sensitive, it raises the inflammation level in your GI tract. And so it's going to worsen if you have insulin resistance. So if looking at your carb tolerance or intolerance profile, and if you're type 4, then you are insulin resistant, then it's going to cause more issues. It's going to raise your cortisol. It's going to increase your estrogen. It increases your body fat. So it's all linked to like thyroid issues, Crohn's disease. So you just need to stay away from it. What we know is that there's a third of the population in the US that has some type of sensitivity when it comes to gluten. And there's a specific gene, it's called the AMY1 gene, that produces the enzyme amylase, which helps the body break down the grains, specifically the gluten. Individuals with more copies of that actual gene are more likely to be able to digest the grains better than other people lacking in that gene. So you're like, well, why don't I just get the enzyme amylase? It's not that simple. Because if you're lacking in that AMY1 gene, then you're automatically increasing inflammation. So the inflammation is going to cause gut disruption. So it's kind of like a double, now maybe not a double-edged sword, but you're defeating the purpose. You're increasing inflammation, and then you're trying to put in an enzyme to help you break it down. So you're kind of putting your body at a halt. Now, it wouldn't hurt. I do suggest it, especially if you know that you've had gluten and you're gluten intolerant, but don't think that that's going to be like your number one answer. You're better off staying away from it as much as possible. And one of the things I always say, I'm like, I'm 90-ish% gluten-free, okay? Now let's just talk about some bonus nutrients. It's not a macronutrient, but it's really important is hydration for flushing out fat, your toxins, the bacteria, your brain function, your kidney function, your hormone balance. So taking in high water foods, making sure that you're taking in even, just drinking quality water, a half a gallon to a gallon. There's different ways that you can get in your ratios. Soups, certain fruits, vegetables, low-fat dairy actually are higher in water. And one of the things I mentioned a few minutes ago, your brain, I think it's like 90% of your brain is made up of water. So hydration is really important. You ever notice it's like, oh man, I have a headache. You start drinking some water and the headache goes away. And you want to make sure that you stay hydrated, because when you are dehydrated, it increases your cortisol level. So that's putting more stress on you. So now you're defeating the purpose. You see all these little things, how we're trying to do good, but then that one little thing that we keep missing can be the key component in order for us to get the results that we're looking for, right? That just little minor tweak. Bonus nutrient, again, is fiber, because it gives you a sense of fullness. It helps with the blood glucose levels. It helps reduce your risk for disease, helps absorb toxins in the system and flush it out of you. So we'll have better intestinal health, waste elimination, all of those things. So higher the fiber, the better when it comes to like your green vegetables, your cruciferous vegetables. They're just nutrient packed. Now, what I'm going to do, so that's a lot of information. I am going to pause here, and I'm going to break up this module into 2 segments. And what we're going to do right now in the next module is we're going to talk about macro percentages and tracking, because it's tailored to your body. That's one of the things that I already talked about. So I'll see you guys. Let's talk about our macro percentages and tracking, and how we identify those things, and how we go through the steps, the phases for your hormone macro code on the next module.